Hey, good Monday morning, and thanks for checking out your latest long-range forecast update. Michael Clark here with BAM Weather with your latest. I've got the new iPhone here. We're transferring over, because we have to get new iPhones every year now. So that's fun. That's taken a long time. It's cold out this morning. It's chilly. It's rainy. We've got some nasty kind of mist and drizzle here across the eastern half of the country, the Ohio Valley, up into the north and east. And then it's dry. It's rather uneventful in the central portion of the U.S. here. Looking over the weekend rainfall numbers, we've had some decent rain here over the weekend. If we go pull my map up here we go. This is the last 3 days, and you can see where we've had some of the heavier rains across portions of central and eastern Iowa, northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, and through portions of central northern Indiana as well, through portions of Michigan. So, I've had some rain here over the last few days. It's gotten progressively wetter here in the central U.S. In terms of really the next 24 hours for rain, we're not looking at much in the way of anything. It's just a mist drizzle here across the eastern portion of the country, up in here to the north and east as well. Okay, so let's take a look here. This is precipitation over the last 30 days, and this is where it's gotten progressively wetter than what it has been. And this were some of the thought processes, if you will. Now, we did kind of think that some of this would maybe possibly be a little bit further down to the south. It's interesting because the deep south here has become very, very dry. We'll talk about that in just a second. But overall, the pattern has become at least more active than what it was. And as we look into next week, there's a big signal for a really, really active pattern to emerge here. Okay. But we talked about, how dry it's gotten. In fact, across portions of still northern Missouri, southern Indiana, Tennessee, down here into the deep south, we've seen this area here since August really kind of venture into some of the driest periods on record. The higher the number, the drier it is in terms of comparison over the last 131 years. So we've really seen a really, really dry transition to this pattern. We've really seen things become increasingly less active down here to the south. Again, I think there could be some change coming, but we need to kind of talk about, exactly where that might take shape. Okay. In the short term, I do want to talk about at least some rather gusty wind risks here. And for the crop, this time of year, not going to be super ideal, but really getting into Tuesday night and into the early morning hours of Wednesday, looking at potentially some really strong winds here across portions of the central and western plains. In fact, some locations here may see wind gusts upwards of 45 miles per hour, maybe even locally 50 mile per hour gusts in western South Dakota, western Nebraska, western Kansas. Some really intense winds there, certainly not out of the question. Okay. The pattern overall, again, here, at least in the short term, again, it is going to be relatively quiet. There is a area of low-pressure Clipper-like system that will bring some rain to North Dakotas here in Minnesota as we go again Wednesday into Thursday. That's where the wind's going to come from. That will move rain chances into the Ohio Valley here late week. Some thunderstorm chances can't be ruled out. That system will kind of phase and become a bigger one on the East Coast late week. A lot of quiet time after that into the central U.S. here. In fact, really a lot of quiet time until probably getting into that day 9 or 10 time frame, and a bigger storm system may emerge around the 24th. And then yet again, possibly an even bigger storm system around Halloween. There's several indications right now of a really strong cold front and possibly early season winter event here in the Central Plains around Halloween that could bring severe weather and a big blast of cold air behind it. Very similar to like 2019, where we had a big cold front and huge storm system come through right around Halloween. So we are going to be watching that for sure. Precipitation totals the next 7 days. Well, again, weak Clipper system, northern plains. It will bring some rain and storm activity to the Ohio Valley and to the Tennessee Valley as well, and to the interior northeast where the storm becomes much more organized, heavier rainfall totals up there in New England. Okay. Now, this is, again, kind of what I was talking about, because the next 5 days overall, relatively inactive and pretty dry versus the normal. Again, you can see some precipitation in here. That 5 to 10 day period, that dryness is still heavily pronounced, very well pronounced here down into the deep south. Virtually little to no moisture at all. But watch what starts to happen as I go to getting into the extended period. We really start to fire up the activity here in the pattern as we get out into late month. All right. In fact, some suggestions here of north of 200% of the normal precipitation. A lot of the indication here from the ensembles, from the data, is a wetter transition due to the MJO, or the tropical forcing pattern. Okay, we'll talk about that in just a second. The last 7 days, temperature-wise, it's been relatively really cool here across the east. This pattern right here is exactly kind of what I had talked about a couple of weeks ago in my videos before our fall break that we had here. But the way this looks, the cold in the east, the warmth in the north and west, that's really no surprise, and it shouldn't have been to a lot of you either, in terms of how that's panned out here. This is the temperature pattern here, the 1 to 5, yeah, and the 6 to 10. We're kind of keeping the cool east, the warm west. And then in between, the 11 to 15 day where some warmth pops in the east. This is possibly ahead of a really big storm system that could get warm out ahead of it. Again, bring a severe weather threat, a heavy rain threat, possibly again near Halloween, with snow and wintry risks on the backside, possibly in the northern plains, central plains area, something to consider. And you can kind of see the trends in the overnight data, the warmth out ahead of it, suggesting that. Now, again, we can see a lot of that behavior in our Madden-Julian oscillation, our tropical forcing, and our forecast methods where we kind of look outside of the box and kind of look at things a little bit differently here. First and foremost, I want to show you this. Okay, watch Eastern Asia here, the Korean islands. Watch this big front right here come down. That's by Friday, October 20th. And the correlation to that, about 10 days from that, takes you out to about the 30th, right? That's a pretty strong signal for a big cold front to end the month, okay? And so that's kind of what we're watching there. Beyond that, when we look in Eastern Asia, we do see some potential ridging developing, okay? And the tropical forcing pattern may suggest that can happen as well, some eastern U.S. ridging. Whether it sets up in the northeast or the southeast, we don't quite yet know for sure, but you can see the suggestion of it here. What this would overall allude to is a very active pattern transition. When you look at the subseasonal model data, the European weekly and the GFS weekly, that takes us out through November 12th and November 15th, respectively, on the GFS. Note what these things are doing. They're both keeping it here in the MJO 8 and 1. Okay, and what that kind of tells us is this is a pattern that can be loaded up, if you will. It can have multiple ups and downs, but the idea is some eastern U.S. ridging and storms that can run into that. Okay, big storms, if you will, big troughs that can run into these ridges. And both phases of the MJO, both phase 8 and 1, they get relatively pretty active. All right, and they can feature big cold dumps with them. All right, but it's not I don't believe it's a pattern where it's consistently cold and it's just nothing but cold. But the cold fronts can be pretty impressive. All right, they can really pack a punch, if you will. So this is a look at years where we've had kind of similar outcomes, where really we've had strong negative global wind patterns or negative angular momentum during El Niños, and that's really what we're dealing with right now. All right, we're no doubt about that's really what we have. The years that really are the closest in terms of not only the forecast modeled behavior, but also the analog as well with the MJO is 91, 94, 04, and 19. Now, while I'm saying that, I do want to show you something real quick here. We just want to look here at the temperature progression, okay, in the models. Check it out right here. This is what I want you to see, like day 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. You see what happens in the ensembles is that warmth out ahead of it, and then by day 15, it tries to bring that cold front in, and that's Halloween. But look at the analogs I just showed you. They kind of look like this here, And then as you get into November, perhaps the cold can become a little bit more consistent or pronounced, at least for the first couple of weeks of November. But what they both do is they feature warmth in the east and cold shots, and they're both really wet. When you look at their precipitation, from normal departure here, they both get relatively pretty wet in here, and so the overall thought process is that we're going to continue to kind of ramp up activity in the pattern with big shots of up and down type cold fronts, or of cold shots, if you will. Listen, this is December. I know a lot of people are curious. What are we thinking for winter? What are we thinking in the extended? Well, the thoughts haven't changed for a warm December pattern. Everywhere we kind of look, in every way, shape, or form that we look, it continues to point to warm and pretty mild for the month of December. I don't have anything right now to say otherwise, but we'll keep watching it for the time being, anticipate the pattern to ramp up, and look for a couple of big cold fronts late month into early November.